This is WGRG 100.5 FM, where we meet the absolute minimum FCC broadcasting standards. It's time to hang on and brace yourself for a community radio program that's frankly indescribable. Let's talk Geneseo. Two guys with nothing better to do on a Friday morning but to talk about our community. Geneseo City Administrator Brandon Meglin and City Alderman Keith Kennett. And yeah, nobody, and I mean nobody, puts the blah in blah 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 like these guys do.
I need to work on that button on the deck there. We do it old school here. If anybody has radio station familiarity, back in the day, they would have cart machines and stuff. You'd hit a button and it'd play all the tracks and what have you. Well, we have an optical player.
Was that a CD you were putting in there?
That actually is a fancy word for CD.
Oh.
Correct.
Okay.
So so we cue them up on that, and then big green button. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. So
there may be some younger listeners that don't know what a compact disc is, Keith. So
no, I know.
Explain this.
And then when you mention a cart deck and stuff, that's basically an old 8-track type looking device back in the analog days, but nobody cares really about that. So it's fun sharing some of that radio technology from the past. But anyway, welcome to Let's Talk Geneseo on this Friday morning. Keith Kennett along with Brandon Meglin here with you. And I think it's like about 2 or 3 degrees outside right now, but so a little chilly. I believe it is FFA week here at the high school. I do know there are several large tractors and stuff in the south parking lot.
Oh.
With FFA student members and stuff doing things out there. So probably a little bit of a cool ride in with the tractors this morning, but farmers, they're hardy. They're used to the cold weather.
Yeah. Well, we love the FFA at the city with the plot that they lease from the city for their project out at the cemetery to helping us with E-Waste Day and just amongst a few of the things, their contributions to the community and to the things we do at the city. So yeah,
so we salute the FFA. If this is FFA week, we salute you on this week, and if it isn't, if it's next week or something, we still salute you nonetheless. And something else I saw a flyer for is I think the Polar Plunge is coming up. I don't think it's next weekend, but maybe early March or something sometime. You may recall that is we kind of informally, maybe we should plan on that a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, that was fun last year. We had, it was like we had a studio audience here in the radio station that day because of all the people coming up to the high school for the Polar Plunge.
Right, and that's where the fire department sets up one of their temporary water storage tanks, and students all come out, sit in the bleachers in the football field, and it's a fundraising event. But basically, you plunge into the cold water. And it was a little chilly last year, as I recall. But I think we said something that this might be fun to put on the radio.
Yeah.
Since it really pretty much happened right at the start of school. So, so might want to.
We'll look into that.
There'll probably be some planning required for that, so I might want to think about that. But anyway, I digress. But we're again, thank you for tuning in and listening or watching us on the live stream, and happy to have our guest with us this morning. And Brandon, turn it over to you to introduce our guest.
Yeah, I should mention as well, Keith, which will kind of lead into our guest this morning. Not sure if you saw it, but a pretty neat article that just came out in the Illinois Farm Bureau Partners magazine. Geneseo was featured in the latest edition there in an article called Small Town Charm Awaits 9 Things to Do in Geneseo, Illinois, where it's a multi-page article with shots of the downtown, including the new mural downtown and some of the new businesses and things going on with Geneseo, and of course featuring the museum and the historic preservation and our Victorian buildings, and kind of just a recap that went out to distributed, statewide, featuring Geneseo. So proud to be featured in that, and that does kind of lead in to the topic of our downtown and historic preservation. And we've got Scott McAvoy with us this morning. Thanks for being here, Scott.
My pleasure.
As usual, we gave Scott about 3 minutes ago the brief on exactly why we invited him here and, the type of things that we'll be talking about with him. So he's scrambling some notes down right now.
That's not unfamiliar. That's all right.
We gave Scott all of it. And 3 minutes, I think, is generous. It was probably more like 45 seconds or so of pre-show prep. But hey, that's how we roll here on Let's Talk Geneseo. But Scott, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to invite Scott because, as a lot of people probably know out there, Scott has been renovating a historic building on State Street. It's at the corner of Exchange and
State.
There, and wanted to kind of talk to Scott about his process and inspiration on what he's doing to that building, because it really is a great example of taking an old building that was in really poor condition and making a detailed investment to retain some of the historic nature of the building, but then also repurposing it for a future use. So welcome, Scott, as we said. And, usually what we do here is, I think you guys are really involved in the community, but for maybe those that don't know you, if you can give us a little bit of your background and, what brought you to Geneseo and being a business investor here and a redeveloper.
Sure. Well, originally I'm from Geneseo. I was born here and raised here, and went to high school here. Graduated and went down to Illinois State University, got my degree, and went straight to Chicago. So I was in Chicago in real estate finance for about 15 years, wearing a suit and tie every day. Many of my clients had their portfolios of real estate, so I would sit and talk with them about that. So I kind of got into that myself, just by being a part of the banking system. So what I did was I purchased a property, rehabbed it, and then that turned into a couple more and turned into a couple more. So pretty soon I've been just doing that nearly exclusively. So I put down the suit and tie and put my Carhartts back on and began just managing my properties. So we had two boys in Chicago, great times in Chicago, and then we're ready for our third boy, and moved back to Geneseo for the opportunities here. And I couldn't get, out of my system the need for wanting to rehab, need properties in need of help. Mm-hmm. So that led me to the place on State and Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And some may know it as I think it was the old Red Wing shoe store, way back. But definitely a building that needed some love.
Yeah, it certainly did, and that's what attracted me to it as well. Admittedly, the more difficult sometimes is more attractive for me. It's easier to go ahead and just get in there and clean house, and start from scratch from a new palette and go from there. I thank the Slocum family for selling me the property, and it's been quite a project, as you mentioned from the get-go. It's it's going on now 5.5 years, I suppose. From taking down those first the skin of steel to seeing what the building actually was, it was a nice eye opener. It was actually fortunate because it showed me a lot of good architectural parts to the place that I wasn't aware of. So like it has an arch in the building, which is unique to a downtown Geneseo property, but I didn't know that it was there because I had a drop roof, or drop ceiling, excuse me. Mm-hmm. So we were able to kind of see a few of those, and of course steel lintels out front. I had no idea those were there, so it kind of just opened itself up as I kept on going through the rehab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Keith mentioned the Red Wing shoe store. Scott, I know that you found some unique things in the building,
yes.
But what do you know about, I guess, the history beyond just that shoe store, things that you've uncovered as part of this process?
It's been a unique building since it was built in 1858. It was owned and built by a grocer, and he had a photography studio on the second floor. A gentleman by the name of Brown owned worked the photography studio, and the gentleman who owned and built those 3 congruent buildings his name was Rastede. His last name was Rastede, and you can still see the Rastede name and the Brown name on the side of my building. You know, once I took off that metal skin, I was able to see all the advertising over the years. So yes, it was a grocer for 50 years or so. It has some unique architectural windows and whatnot on the side and on the roof of the building, which let, of course, the natural light in for the photography studios. So I wanted to make sure that I used that and brought that back to life because they were just so unique to that building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've been gracious enough to have me there a few times to see the progress. But I think one of the neatest things that you're doing is with this, as you're alluding to, the natural light component with the photography studio. But the light will actually carry from the second floor down to the first floor and have some kind of feature in the ceiling, right, as well, to allow light to come down throughout the whole building?
Yes. It's going to be like a natural skylight that will go through the second floor down to the first floor. So you'll be able to see the nighttime sky from the first floor with the balcony upstairs. So that certainly is unique, and that was actually it was given to me because the floor in that section on the second floor was so rotted out. I really didn't have much of a choice besides just to make it a larger hole. So, and admittedly, when I started the place in Chicago, it was I would build rehab places for residents, and that's exactly what I planned on for this building initially as well, to bring my skills of just converting it to a loft or whatnot. But that atrium or that glass roof, I thought it shouldn't just go to one family or one person in that, in the second floor loft. So that's when I decided to go ahead and maybe open that up, the second floor to the first floor, and become, the building as one, as opposed to branching off and having a residence on the second floor and then some, retail of sorts on the first.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about, as you get into it here, I know that you're getting close on, I don't know if you'd call it a finished product or not. It's probably always going to be a work in progress with you, I imagine, but kind of what the vision has been throughout this rehabilitation progress and what you guys are working towards as far as being able to reopen the building there.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the town. The town has been fantastic. Since day one, they were happy to see something happen to the building, and they've been great. People stop by nearly every day that I'm there working, and it's really a pleasure for me. It's not intrusive whatsoever. People normally have some constructive ideas and or share their own personal histories, family histories of the place. And again, originally, I wasn't expecting to be, what's turned into more of a wine bar and event space. Again, originally, I was looking to have a residence on the second floor and retail out of the first. But one day, I let it slip that a couple ladies were walking by and asked what I was looking to do, and I think they'd just come from a lunch down the street, and they were in good spirits, and they had mentioned something about a wine bar. And that kind of clicked with me, and realized, well, that's interesting. So I started mentioning that to people, and 99.9% of the people thought it was a great idea. I wanted to make sure it would be something different to add to the city, as opposed to something that would be in competition. A lot of friends of mine are up and down that street, State Street, and have done wonderful things for the city. And I wanted to make sure that I can hopefully add, as opposed to compete with these guys and gals.
Mm-hmm. So the name that you guys are working under right now is Gaslight Grocer and Wine Bar, correct? What does that grocer part of it mean, or is it just a nod to the history of the building? No,
it is. It is. It did. That certainly had weight, no doubt. The grocer aspect of it, and now people will know, the history of it more so. But the actual grocer was an idea that came from a lot of places in Chicago, that the neighborhood grocers, nearly every neighborhood had one on the corner. Just small items, and this was trying to fall in with the wine bar motif. So we decided to go ahead and go with olives, cheeses. We do have a packaged liquor. I don't necessarily think that's going to be our main, but the grocer side of things, just to have something on the shelves for people, something different as they walk in and enjoy a glass of wine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess a little bit more about. Can you tell us more about the challenges that this is? Again, you explaining the backstory, not a new concept to you, but trying to balance, putting in modern infrastructure and some of the requirements, that you have to follow with rehabbing a building to make it ADA compatible and all of these
Sure.
rules and regulations and things versus trying to keep which I know is very important to you, keeping the historic character as much as possible with the building.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing up the ADA. That was very important to me, to make sure that there are ramps available. As a matter of fact, to jump ahead, one of the things that I ended up putting into place was a wheelchair lift to the second floor, because the second floor is going to be, of course, part of the first. It'd be a little more of a sit-down, loungy, relaxing area upstairs, and I wanted to make sure that was available for everyone. So I do have 2 ADA accessible bathrooms on the second floor, along with that wheelchair lift to get my ADA friends to to the comfortable place that everybody else gets to share. As far as a project, admittedly, when you go into a project and so much needs to be done, you're really wiping the slate clean. That makes it a little bit easier as opposed to working around whatnot. It was very compartmentalized originally when I got the place and took down all those walls, a lot of plaster and a lot of lath, and a lot of walls taken down. So now it's all pretty much open space, and that's easier to work from as well, finishing it off. The materials and whatnot, I still try to keep more in a classic line, some contemporary, but more aesthetic, more aesthetically pleasing type situation. Let's see, as far as the construction itself, admittedly, I didn't. You're always looking for in these old places. You're always looking for the bag of old money or old coins sitting in the walls and whatnot. None of that here. But as you mentioned earlier, the building needed an awful lot of work. It needed a lot of help, and it was unfortunately unused for a certain amount of years before I was able to obtain it, which led to a lot of decay of the natural wood and whatnot in there. So, again, getting back to cleaning the slate, it truly was. It's new from the top down, from the roof all the way down to the basement. New floors, new ceilings, everything else that goes along with that. But like I mentioned, when you take away the compartmentalization of it all, you just have a nice open palette to work with. Makes it a little easier.
You may not have found money, but you have found some interesting things, right? Like some old TV tubes and things of that nature in the basement? Or?
I do. I have 106 of them in my basement right now.
Oh, all right. So
yes, prior to the Red Wing store, it was for years an appliance store owned by the Waggles, and they must have kept every TV that came through that place. So when I got the place, yes, there were TVs all over, weighing the floors down so much that they were pushing through the floors, as a matter of fact, in places. So what I did was I dismantled those TVs and I kept the CRT tubes, the big tubes out of them, and I'm repurposing those for lights now, and that makes an interesting light, but something different to do with it. But yeah, it was quite a project going in there, no doubt.
And I'm sure whenever you take on a project like this, you purchase the building, you have your ideas and stuff, but I'm sure you probably ran across some things that unexpected the items to deal with. Are there any that really stand out as being a particularly challenging, unexpected situation? That's a popular question, and I in all honesty,
knowing from what I came from in Chicago, and getting into that building, I had a pretty good idea of the scale, what was going to need to be done with that. So, in a negative sense, I really didn't have any surprises. But on the other end of the scope, I had really nice surprises with the place. As I was taking it down, I had the engineers come through, and they gave it their seal of approval, and realized that the structure itself was very, very sound. The bones of it, the joists of of the building and whatnot, was all very sound. I was very happy to hear that. But as I mentioned before, it had a drop ceiling, so I didn't see the arch, when I first saw the place. So you take that down and you say, wow, and that really opens itself to the aesthetic of the natural aesthetic of the place. And then, that drop ceiling also covered my steel lintels from the front that you can see now. And those steel lintels allowed me to go ahead and showcase that. You see a few of them up and down Geneseo, up and down State Street. A few of a similar style of lintels, but it allowed me to go ahead and put those beveled glass windows in the front. So small stuff like that was actually, big changes when I first saw them, but changes for the positive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Don't want to put you on the spot too much here, Scott, but
that's what we do.
That's our job here. Are you guys talking about opening dates or dates where the public may begin to utilize the space? And then part two of that is, what you explained the nature of the anticipated business, but are there any other things that you guys foresee being able to collaborate with the community, or things that you would like to see the space used for?
Yes, absolutely. Well, to the first part of the question of when we'll be opening, I've been answering that for the last 18 months, a couple months.
Longer than that, bro.
A couple months, perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. But of course, I get it. People are anxious. I'm anxious. And I mentioned before, people stop by and their first statement is, "Well, I really love what you've done to the place." And of course, the next question is, "When are you opening?"
Now get to work.
Right. My fingernails are always dirty. I'd love to. We're getting to the point of now finishing up with cosmetics, finishing up with the kitchens and whatnot, and I'm truly hoping that we're looking at maybe a mid to late spring, something. I don't think it's going to be a ribbon cutting event, but right away. But it'll be a situation where we'll be licensed, we'll be insured, we'll be ready to go, and open the doors in some capacity. We already have a few events scheduled for the summer and early fall, so I suppose I better get busy.
We'll call it spring-ish for now.
And as far as the second part of the question about what to do with the place and what we're planning on doing, it may be a little unique. We are going to have a full kitchen in there, so we will be, the place will be available for events and caterings and whatnot. But we also still would like to have, evening light plates of sorts. Again, the olives and cheeses and whatnot. But I'd love to bring in a sushi chef, once a month, or I'd love to reach out to the local bistros in the area. Princeton has a few, and Galva. Of course, in the cities, I'd love to reach out to the other chefs for maybe they can come and showcase their talents an evening at our building, and also help, move their product or move their restaurant or bistro wherever they might be. Mm-hmm. So it's still a work in progress. Still a lot of ideas coming up and down the pike, and we're looking forward to all of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Scott, for being here and sharing the story. I think it's really important, and it's really, I think it's a very shining example of a lot of other people have done it as well, but this is going to be the newest example of, really talking about historic preservation and how to do it right with maintaining the character of our downtown and being able to have a usable space, which is super important for the historic district. So
Yeah, it's a tremendous investment you and the other business owners have made, too. I'm sure this was not, none of these are inexpensive undertakings.
Sure.
And at some point, they probably become a little bit of a labor of love as you're doing them. But, just the asset, though, for the community and for State Street that helps it not only maintain its vibrancy, but have it expand and grow. And I know that, at least on appearances, it looks that, a lot of the work, you've done on your own. You don't see a lot of contractors' trucks or what have you. It's pretty much you doing most everything.
You will see a red truck there, though. And my father has done an awful lot of help with me out there. So yes, I've had my help when needed, and it's been great to reconnect with my dad as well there. And yes, oftentimes it's just us two.
Well, that's probably making some special memories just in doing that. So
no doubt.
Very cool. But so appreciate you coming in this morning, and we'll give you a T-shirt that said "I survived my time here on Let's Talk Geneseo." But you did great, and hope you had an enjoyable time being with us this morning. Also,
I did. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, anything big going on city-wise of note to share?
Yeah, I think, we should probably mention this past Valentine's Day, the mayor proclaimed it to be Angie Snook Appreciation Day. That got a lot of exposure on media and the city's Facebook page, website, and WHBF ended up doing a story on it as well. Came out to town here and interviewed Angie for her over 40 years of community service, and a lot of that with dedication to the Geneseo Historical Museum and her work that she did there. So big shout out to her.
Definitely a well-deserved recognition to Angie. Probably most everybody at some point has crossed paths or interacted with her, but definitely just a treasure of the community and her efforts at the museum over all these years. And in many ways, the museum as we know it would not be here without her. And of course, a transition taking place there. And I believe next Friday, we're going to have the new director, Melanie Rice, coming in and be able to chat with her a little bit on what the future looks like for the museum a little bit also.
Yeah, that should be another great program. And then Eric Rowald, our director of electric, reminded me that I should mention for parents of high school students out there, high school seniors, or maybe high school seniors that are listening right now, there is a IMUA scholarship. This is a scholarship that's offered by a utility association that the City of Geneseo Electric is part of. It's a $2,500 scholarship. It's a pretty short essay. They have a number of topics that you can pick through that relate to utilities and public utilities and climate issues and things to write, but can qualify and go in the running for a $2,500 scholarship through them. That's due by March 14th. You can find more information about that by going to cityofgeneseo.com, clicking on our news and posting sections. It's listed right there exactly what you need to do, or that's on the city Facebook page as well. Also should mention that this is the time of year when we really ramp up to hire spring seasonal and summer seasonal staff. So, if you're someone, high school, through adults, doesn't matter. We're looking for reliable people, retirees, looking to pick up a handful of hours additionally. If you enjoy mowing, riding lawn mowers, things like that, being outside during the spring season, we're looking for reliable people that can help out with all of the turf management that we have throughout our many acres of grass to cut and parks to maintain coming up this spring. As we have opera music in the background.
Those aren't angels singing, but even though it may sound like that, you may not hear it on air, but again, the school plays their music that starts at various periods that is broadcast into the studio here. That was just an interesting background choice here, but Spoonful of Sugar Helps the Medicine Go Down is the soundtrack right now. But anyway, we digress. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Brandon.
Yeah, I think that's it. We've got a committee of the whole meeting coming up, packed agenda on Tuesday for those that follow the city council actions and meetings. So check that out. Those are, again, always streamed live on the YouTube channel, City of Geneseo. Search on YouTube for those that can't or don't wish to attend in person. You can always follow live at home as well if you have an internet connection. So
there you go.
That'll be Tuesday night.
Mark it on your calendars. Okay, well, with that, we'll pull the plug on this program then. Brandon, always a pleasure. Again, thanks for coming in and joining us this morning. We have Justin waiting with the weather update and stuff when we wrap things up here, so we invite you to stay tuned for that in a few minutes afterwards.
I think he's going to have some good news coming up.
I'll tell you what, he better make it warmer or something, because this 1 degree stuff is not super fun. Yeah. But anyway, okay, well, you've been listening to WGRG 100.5 FM in Geneseo, and have a great weekend.